It is Dave Lawrence, and thank you so much for listening and tuning in for this. I'm thrilled to have Peter and Julian Frampton with me, and if you were listening recently on HPR, I had a wonderful interview discussing primarily Thank You, Mr. Churchill, and it's a follow-up to that, and we're here in their hotel room in Waikiki. Thank you so much. Aloha.
Aloha, it's Peter here, and there's Julian.
Aloha, thank you so much for having us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me here in your room, and a great interview that we did the other day, Peter. And we talked, as I just mentioned, primarily about the new record. But as we were sitting down, you said something, you guys, I can't remember exactly what, about previous times here in Hawaii. And I just thought some Hawaii connections would be an appropriate way to get started this time. What is your history, if you can sort of encapsulate it with the islands?
Well, I believe, I'm sorry to say, but I don't believe I've played here more than once back in the late 70s. I know that if I was here in the 80s, I don't remember, unfortunately.
You have that reverse. Most people, it's like they don't remember the 70s.
Well, I only remember the 70s because it was, you remember when you first come here, you know, even though I was probably a little blotto then. But no, but I remember as well as playing at the HIC the very first time, and then having some time to spend here and going to see the volcano and doing all sorts of stuff. And it was great. We were here in Waikiki, and then we went to Maui. We didn't play in Maui, I don't believe. And I remember Toto opened up for us, their very first live gig. So it was the first time I met Steve Lukather and everybody. So that was great. And then I've been here about 3 or 4 times and been to Maui and stayed at various different, I had an apartment one time and everything, because obviously that's when I was living in Los Angeles. It's so much easier to come to Hawaii.
Convenient.
Yeah, very convenient. So, and when I've been on the East Coast, I go down to the Bahamas or the islands over there, so.
Nice. Now you're living a good life. So you've been here. When was the last visit that you were here?
It's quite a few years ago. I to be honest, I don't remember exactly when it was, but it's way too long. That's all I can say.
And seared in your memory, as I mentioned, thinking of Hawaii memories, is there one thing that you remember? I remember going to the volcano, or I remember doing a certain activity or thing.
I remember ending up on stage with Stephen Stills in Maui in a club, and don't remembering how I got on the stage. But I remember leaving it. But it's usually around the other way, isn't it? There's a lot of blotto talk here.
But you can remember doing that?
Yeah, I remember.
Impromptu sort of thing.
Yeah. I forget where it was, but Stephen was down, and I'd known him for a while at that point. Always been, one of those people I always wanted to meet from Buffalo Springfield on, Because Buffalo Springfield was the band that Humble Pie was listening to when we formed. It's very strange. And then after knowing Stephen, he said that they were listening to Humble Pie.
The roads of rock. And yourself, Julian, have you previously gotten to be in the islands?
No, this is my first time here, actually. This is my final state. I have now completed the circle, and I've been to all 50.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah, it's very exciting for me. So it's so far so good. It's very beautiful, but I just got here about an hour ago.
That's cool. Yeah, I remember.
You already got laid.
Yeah, you've been laid. He works fast like that, just like his old man. And you have when you were. I grew up in Delaware. What did you do in Delaware? You just drive through, or did you actually do anything that you can remember there?
I think in Delaware, it was probably on the road with him. So it could have been a drive-through, but if you have done a show there, I might have been with you when I was younger. So I've done a lot of backpacking and camping over the years, but then the remainder of the states would be driving through or hanging out with him on tour over the years.
And both Peter and Julian have these interesting inner forearm tattoos. Peter's is, describe that for me.
It's actually, it's the Alpha and the Omega is the beginning and the end, and it signifies gratitude. So that's something. We did them both. I'll let him tell you what his, Julian's is, but we did them both at the same time. And basically, for me, this signifies the journey that I started almost exactly 8 years ago, being sober. So It's very, 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 very important to me, that right there, and also to be with my son when I got it. It's very, very important to me. It was a very special moment for us.
I could just tell looking at him when I'm fortunate I can sit here. It's this unique opportunity to investigate. Tell me a little bit about yours.
Well, I never thought in a million years that the first tattoo I got would be sitting next to my dad also getting a tattoo. But
And his first, right? That was your first tattoo?
Yeah.
Okay, so his first,
Yeah.
and then
my first as well, actually. So this is actually a fox. And like I was mentioning earlier, I've done a fair amount of backpacking and camping, so that was my nickname when I was younger, for many reasons.
wow, that is really. I can look at you. You're gonna fit right in Hawaii, man. Be very busy here. So great. So there are a few connections, and I guess you've sort of ruled out, although you haven't officially, one connection to you, which I've interviewed you. Not that you would ever remember or that I would expect it, but I've interviewed you on the phone many times. And one of the things that we talked about was George Harrison, who a lot of folks who are your fan don't know how close you were with him. George lived on Maui in Hana. I'm assuming, never visited him there.
No, I never visited him here. I mean, there was a time period where, unfortunately, we lost touch. But my main time when I would spend time with him was in the early 70s down at Friar Park at his house in Henley. And in the studio, when I would play on his records and things he was producing.
Were you still getting to see him later in his life?
No, I tried a couple of times to reconnect, but it wasn't to be. Unfortunately, it's something that I really regret, and I came very close to hooking back up with him, but it never really happened.
Is that just because, and that's a great lead into the other things that I wanted to talk to you about, is that because he's a star and you have to go through all these layers of insulation to get to him? I mean,
it was just, I was obviously very good friends with Patty, his wife, who then moved on to Mr. Clapton. I met her along the way many years afterwards, and everything. And I called her up and asked. I knew George was in town, and they were still good friends. And I asked. This was about 10 years ago, I guess, maybe a little bit more. And I just asked her, how do I get hold of George? And so she told me to call this number, and whoever answered, who shall remain nameless, said, "Why is everybody calling here for George?" and went and hung up on me. So I sort of went, oh, okay, maybe I'm not supposed to get hold of him, So that it was very upsetting for me that I never got to
reconvene.
Yeah. Because I did with Steve Marriott from Humble Pie, and that was very important to me. And even though it was unfortunate right after that period we lost him, but I think that especially now in the journey I'm on with a new birthday and everything, it's very important to reconnect with people that you've met and lost touch with. It's an important thing, I think, in life to do that, and I do it as much as I can now, and whether people like it or not, but I'm much more forceful about it.
I think we should reconnect.
Yeah, we are going to reconnect, and sometimes it's been there's been an apology attached to it too, from something that I might have done when I wasn't particularly a nice person at that period of my life. I think it's just, you get older, and especially, in this, as I keep mentioning this journey, but it's been the best 8 years of my life, and I can honestly say that.
Were you doing that much stuff? You seem so clean when I was around you in '94.
I wasn't.
It just sounds like you have this had such an impact. It's just like, wow, yeah. I didn't see him as like that out of control.
You didn't. No, but it's something that wasn't habitual, but it's supposedly almost worse, is a binger, that can be clean for 3 months and then just go on a binge. And I could be dangerous. And in the end, it just got to the point where it was something I had to do. And I have to say that even though it's a journey a day at a time for me, that what I have got from it is a feeling of safety. And that's the most important thing for me personally, is a feeling a feeling of safety that if I continue this the way I'm at, I don't have to worry about things I might do to other people, you know.
Thinking of others too. That's an interesting balance with why you would be cleaning up. And it's a strange question to ask you, but I feel so much more like we're on the same age, even though I feel older than you, because I listened. I listened to him, as a kid. Yeah. Do you party, or are you clean too?
I too am clean, yeah.
And have always been? Or?
No, I've been clean for about 2 years now.
Wow, and so there's an area of bonding then too with your dad, I'm assuming.
Yeah, over the last 2 years, my dad has morphed into not only my dad but my best friend. So it's been great. I mean, being on this journey with him, it's something special.
Oh, it sounds it, and what a great thing you have on this record. I was talking to your dad. I did a long interview all about the new record the other day, and one of the things I was trying to pinpoint it when I was talking to you about "Road to the Sun," a great song on the album that you sing vocals on. And I was trying to think, whose voice do you sound like? And he just mentioned Steve. Were you a Humble Pie fan? Where does some of your inspiration and texture come from?
Well, of course, Steve Marriott is a god vocally. And then not only that, because I grew up listening to Humble Pie, but 90s rock for me is my biggest influence. So Chris Cornell and Lane Staley and Kurt Cobain and that kind of Scott Weiland, that kind of time period and that grungier style of vocals, I really do enjoy. So that's kind of where my influences come from. But obviously, from Humble Pie and older stuff as well, because that's what I grew up with.
When did you graduate high school?
2006.
Is college a part of your world?
A few times it has been. On and off. Not as of right now. Right now I'm working full time, so it's a little difficult for me to do both. But
can I ask what? Doing what?
Yeah, I actually work at a cage-free canine camp. So I take care of dogs all day, pretty much.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I'm a manager over there, so I handle business, and I sometimes up to 100 and over 100 dogs in 3 separate areas. So I love it. It's great. No one ever talks back to me because they can't. I love it.
Animals have a pure soul too, though. There's something.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's funny that I look back and I grew up with a dog my whole life, and I didn't get into music until I was a little bit older, actually, playing it. But now my life only revolves around dogs and music, so it's kind of funny.
Dude, they're solid. It says a lot about you. I was thinking, what does he do? Because you seem very down to earth and connected to things, and the animals would influence that. And speaking of being down to earth and connected, you in the conversation with your father, with Peter, the other day, you made a candid remark, and it was, but it was good though. I like that. I mean, I treasure that stuff. You're a successful guy. You're Peter Frampton. You've done a lot of stuff, and you said this remark about. I like this new record because, most of the new ones, I just sort of forget about them after making them. And I like that because it's an insight that I'm sure a lot of fans are curious about, and you just came right out and said it. Is that unique to recent albums for you? And are the albums at some point obligatory rather than artistically needed?
There have been obligatory albums, yes, and those are my least favorites. But I think that the last 2 CDs, Fingerprints, the instrumental one, and this one, Thank You, Mr. Churchill, I feel after all this time that I'm really back on track. For me, I've moved. They're artistically very rewarding, both of them. And I feel that they are the first 2 that I really don't really care what anybody else I guess I've always been trying to go for that hit, again or whatever, and that's usually when you can't find one, and they come by accident. And I'm not looking for a hit. I'm just looking to make good music. I don't. I'm trying to think about the next one because and all the different things that I could do for the next one. And it's getting really intriguing to me because the world's my oyster. We don't sell that many records anymore. I don't care who you are. It's a completely changed landscape. CDs are going to disappear. It's everyone. What do you mean CD? Well, they will. You watch. Mark my words. Yes, of course there'll be people that will press up, small labels that will press up CDs, but they will disappear. Everything will end up in the sky, in a cloud, as it is more and more every day. Radio stations don't use CDs; they use MP3s on a computer screen, and it's very disturbing to me because the quality of an MP3 is shitty.
You must say it. Some things must be said.
Yeah. It's awful. It's just awful. We spend all this time and effort in the studio making these really high quality sounds and capturing these really great sounds with such great high quality. And whether it's analog or it's digital, I do both. I'm intermingle with both of them. And then we put it out there, and it's streamed or downloaded at such low quality that it makes me wonder why we do it. And it's scary to think that people are going to end up with these tiny MP3 files, and they're happy with them. That's what upsets me, that they never actually get to hear them how I look forward to hearing my finished master, or somebody else's finished master. There's a place called hdtracks.com that I'm involved with now. It's wonderful that they exist, and I want to make sure they stay there. They will download you full master quality digital download, and you put it on a hard drive, and you can play. You have to buy a little converter, and it's not that cheap, and it's not for everybody. But if you want to hear it how it was recorded and mastered, you can do it, and that there are places you can get those. But you see, CD quality is one thing. That's pretty good, but it's still 100 times less quality than what we actually mix. Sorry, I went off on a geek diatribe there.
You know what it is, though? It's something, because I'm glad you did, because I don't know. I mean, do you realize like what a bad motherfucker your dad is on the guitar? I mean, like I think the thing about you that is so underappreciated, because you've had a lot of success, and I just want to really quickly interject this, is that you really are a slamming guitarist, and your attention to detail, the stuff you were just saying is sort of like the parentheses of that. It gives some insight into it. So, no, I'm glad that you took a moment to do that, because I've been wanting, just so that you know that, dude, I know you're really famous and really appreciated, but I listen to like your guitar playing now. You're on fire, dude.
Thank you.
I mean, you are slamming. And I guess following what you just said, or my intent of it, do you need to hustle? You don't need to do these records, right?
No. I mean, I'm very lucky in one way that I'm with one of the last big record labels. They asked me back because they have my entire catalog. I don't own my catalog. They Universal bought Polygram, who bought A&M, who bought all these other labels, and so everything I've ever recorded with the Herd, Humble Pie, or my solo career is all with Universal Music. So that's
a little scary.
Yeah, it is. But I mean, and they won't want to hear this, but they're going to end up selling something else soon. I don't know what it is, but I don't see it being like a future thing for them. I don't see much of a future for big record labels unless they start doing something else. I don't know what that's going to be. But even so, I'm very lucky. They'll probably get rid of me after this. No, but I am lucky to be with one of the last standing big labels, because they don't have much money for promotion, but they have more than I do, if I were on my own label, which I have my own label as well. But it's a scary thing that this is all going to disappear. No, I don't have any requirements to to do a record. I mean, what are they going to do? Put me on suspension like the old days? Because it's not my, and a lot of artists, form of income anymore. It's just we used to go on tour to promote the album. I said this to you before. Now we put an album out to promote tour. And it's you give that away.
So at the end of the day, they can be artistic statements because they're not required to be your revenue source, so they really can be fun.
Absolutely, and I don't have to rush them. Some things come quickly, some things take a long time. Some music, it depends what you're doing. But no, it's purely like I've got a couple of easels at home, and I've got a couple of different canvases, and I'm working on a couple at a time. And when they're ready, then they'll be ready to bring out. There's been various different viewpoints on like Radiohead, who are sort of at the forefront of going with the changes of the industry, and I really admire their music as well as the way they dealt with things. But I mean, they've made an album. We think Julian said this, but whether they put an album out, I doubt it. I think they're going to put out a track at a time. We'll see. Be very interesting to see where they go, because what they do is sort of what a lot of other people look towards, because they were the first artist to put out an album and ask the public what to pay for it, which was they can afford to do that, obviously, but they're the sort of people that whether they could or they couldn't, they would have done it anyway, and I admire that about them. So we'll have to see where it's going. It's really interesting, but I think for me, the bottom line is that every piece of music that I write and record now is just, there's no other reason but for the love of doing it.
Yeah, because you don't need it, and that's great to hear.
It's like I always go back to Humble Pie when we all got together, and it was the best of all of our pieces of music, and we'd get excited about each other's music, and therefore we'd actually, I remember when Steve would sing a vocal, we'd all applaud him. And I'd go out and do a solo, the band would applaud. It was excitement. It was like, wow, that's something you haven't played before. You haven't sung that before, Steve. Wow. I remember going up to Steve and saying, that's probably one of the best vocals I've ever heard you do, and you go, oh man, thanks so much. And that was that sort of energy of, it wasn't, the last thing we were thinking was, what is the man on the street going to think of this? Right. It was, we loved what we were doing, and I feel I'm very lucky to be able. A lot of new acts will never get the chance, and it makes me feel terrible. But and I realize how lucky I am to be in this position.
From the cover of Hit Parader to The Simpsons to the Geico ad. You've done a lot. Hey, man, thanks. I appreciate your time today.
Very nice. Thank you. It's great to be here, and thanks for coming up.
And you. It's been a pleasure, and great to learn some of the stories that we did today, and thanks for being available with your dad. It was very special.
Awesome. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're the man.
Hi, this is Peter Frampton. Aloha! In the islands, you're tuned to listener-supported Hawaii Public Radio. Aloha, this is Peter Frampton here, and you're tuned to the only show that matters with my friend Dave Lawrence.
Aloha, this is Julian Frampton, and you're tuned to the only show that matters with my friend Dave Lawrence.